Ladies and gentlemen, we are very pleased and thank you for the opportunity that my colleague and I can share with you today some perhaps somewhat philosophical thoughts on the cultural background to the current American security situation. Seeing the American riots, many may question how American society could have fallen on its components in such a short time, even though the USA remained the world's #1 superpower. To understand the situation today, we need to recall the roots of American superpower, status and identity, in which the work of Thomas Stephen Molnar is a great help. First, allow me to recall a personal memory for you. Sometime in the early 2000s, Professor Molnar gave a lecture at the Péter Pázmány Catholic University in Hungary in Budapest. The organizer of the event asked me to accompany Mr. Molnar home. This nearly 3/4 of an hour was spent with a very memorable conversation from which I would now just take a moment. I, as a kind of young idealist, spoke enthusiastically about my ideas, plans, thoughts, insights. Professor Molnar smiled and said, "It's good to listen to such an enthusiastic young man, but I don't share your optimism. You know, I came from a place after the Doomsday." What did Professor Molnar, who came from the United States at the peak of his power, mean by this? I only really understood this years later regarding reading Professor Molnar's works on Atlantic culture. He noticed with good sense the problems in American culture that are becoming apparent to our eyes these days and almost result in a civil war situation. Examining the issues of American identity, Mr. Molnar recalls that American society has rejected the European patronage from the beginning because America firmly believes that America is enough for itself, and that is an unprecedented novelty which embodies positive morality, and that is free from a sinful, tragic human condition. According to Mr. Molnar, understanding the American way of life is not possible without recalling the worldview of European immigrants. Most American settlers were members of some Protestant denominations. The legacy of this can be experienced to this day. He said, "It is a society that still lives according to Calvinist formulas. An American will only feel good if he can get rid of his individuality and do it like the others. Conformism is so strong that it often has ridiculous and often serious vulgar sides. American culture, even if of religious origin, has become utterly profane in line with a series of self-evident truths such as pluralism, the separation of state and church, lack of government control, and public support for culture, and so on. The surface individualism of American society only seemingly contradicts this. In fact, it is only the antithesis of the above theorem. Everyone strives to deviate from the ordinary, like the others. According to Thomas Molnar, the characteristic of American culture is the disappearance of transcendence from public thinking, the result of which is that in America's cultural self-consciousness, things are what they are, and to be immediately integrated into the social panorama at all cost, and to be adapted to the requirements that come with it. The legal significance of things, the criteria of public acceptance, the focus of success. That is, it is nothing more than automatic, correspondence between design and result, the conformist operation of the social process. Molnar also pointed out that as a result of changed role of advertising, people are not just consumers of goods, but actors in a show that is always the same, a kind of perpetual happening. The so-called spontaneous mass movements are no different in this respect. Events also conform to a pattern, and the participants in the movements who demand authenticity and freedom play exactly the role that TV cameras encourage them to do. Molnar recognizes the role of the media in this, in which imagination and reality are mixed. The media that carry out the fusion know with scientific thoroughness the limit to how far they can go so as not to disturb the ordinary world. Molnar also noticed the danger of language manipulation, the disintegration of the previous meaning, the redefinition of words, and the emergence of new linguistic taboos and interpretation disputes. He saw this rooted in fact that culture had lost its purpose and had become a means of realizing utopian ideas. In his views, today's culture is an utopian undertaking of an esoteric and extensive minority whose members dream of assembling a new universe. Thus the words became uncertain as the artificial and shapeless objects themselves which they try to examine. Culture is not expected to serve or guide to human desire for beauty and intellect and to interpret back and forth between objects and symbols. Instead, they are burdened with contribution to the difficult birth of a new word and thus no new meaning and new persons.
I would like to also welcome everyone at this online conference. Me and my colleague, we are very happy that we can take a part at this conference. Now I would like to continue to share Thomas Molnar ideas about this topic. Molnar also recognized universalist and hegemonic aspirations of American thinking. Thomas Molnar said, "It has no boundaries. It moves, it spreads, it retreats, it expands again. It doesn't matter if it devours other cultures, because its dynamism is not given by spirit and profound creation, but by human needs of food, comfort, various objects, leisure, entertainment. It does not conflict with other cultures, but simply makes them superfluous, irrelevant. This friendly flexibility is compatible with some intolerance because it aims at worldwide hegemonization. In other cultures, we encounter strong internal division and innumerable nuances, but a culture of homogeneity does not tolerate differences. Thomas Molnar also said, "It's like equality. Any deviation, whether in the direction of excellence or vulgarity, is against the norm." Perhaps Molnar was the first to criticize the role of NGOs in society. He said, "Based on what I have seen in this country, what happens when civil society seizes power." He also said, "My experiences are negative. Civil society has seized power, and this has become one of the main crises of modernity." Thomas Molnar also said, "What happens to the various lobbies of civil society? So it's not civil society itself, because it is too big to speak for itself, but its lobbies are very authoritative." He also said, "We live under lobby power." He also raised the possibility of a conflict between US business and US nation states, which, as some analysts say, seems to be unfolding these days. They says US business needs to think globally, no matter what is good for the US. All of these phenomena, i.e. latent conformism, the disappearance of the transcendent dimension, the mediatization of social action, language manipulation, hegemonic, egalitarian and utopian aspirations, language manipulation, and the excessive role of lobby groups, which has created a culture of being insulted and responsible for nothing, that can in many respects provide answers to harsh social tensions, with the loud endorsement of the media, have escalated in America today, with unbridled violence between social groups that ignores any value, including also the respect of human life and property, or the prohibition of violence against defenseless, which even in the midst of social conflicts should deserve absolute respect in a state government by the rule of law. We strongly believe that this idea, what Thomas Molnar shared before, can be very useful today to the problems and conflicts in America, and maybe we can get some advices or some very interesting and deep thoughts about this topic. We would like to thank you for your attention, and we are thank you to listening.